Good day, everybody. My name is Dennis Collier, and for over a decade, each and every winter semester, I have taught a course in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto about athletic performance. And as cool and as interesting as I believe the science aspect of sports to be, this World Series run by the hometown Blue Jays that we just witnessed really reminded me of the real reason why we watch sports. And dare I say, the reason why sports are valuable. And that is because of the emotional experiences that they create. Now, cynics might say that's stupid. They might say you're foolish if you let yourself get that emotionally invested in sports. But my retort to that would be kind of you're missing the point because it's not really so relevant how you get to these endpoints on the emotional continuum, but just the fact that you get to experience them. And I can say with all honesty, if I was to analyze myself here today, my experiences on the outer extremes of this range, for good and for bad, by the way, have been caused through sports. For example, in recent years, I have not found myself getting dragged emotionally into sports so often until these friggin' Blue Jays came along in 2025. Put it this way, I have not been so saddened by a sporting event since Team Canada lost the shootout in the 1998 Winter Olympics. True story. But the sport of baseball, I think, more than any other game, really lends itself to the manufacturing of these ultra dramatic, ultra emotional moments. And one key feature of this is the home run. The coolest way to score in sports by far, cooler than scoring a goal in hockey, cooler than anything you can do in basketball or football. And so I've decided to make this video for a number of reasons. Number one, because home runs are so damn cool. Number two, because I've caught, or should I say re-caught, Blue Jays fever. And number three, because the last video that I made about the Blue Jays losing the World Series really focused on the negative stuff, and it got me kind of sad. And I thought maybe it can be kind of an uplifting experience if I were to assemble and then count down in order, finishing with the best of the best, the top 5 greatest home runs in the history of the Toronto Blue Jays. The 5th greatest home run in Blue Jays history, I think, is Roberto Alomar, Game 4 of the 1992 American League Championship Series. Now, in order to understand why, it would be very helpful to have a little bit of a history of the franchise up to this exact moment, the description of which would depend on whether you asked an optimistic Blue Jays fan or a pessimistic Blue Jays fan. The optimistic Blue Jays fan might describe the franchise history up to this moment as having some pretty good teams that couldn't quite win the big one. The pessimistic Blue Jays fan would maybe describe them as being a bunch of choke artists. In 1985, the Blue Jays had a great team, won the division, advanced to the ALCS. In fact, got themselves one win away from going to the World Series, and then lost the next 3 consecutive games to the Kansas City Royals. 2 years later, 1987, this same group basically has an even more absurd collapse. It's so absurd, it sounds like it's not even true, but apparently it is. So there's a week left in the regular season. The Jays are winning their division, and then they lose their final 7 games in a row. Don't even make the playoffs. Another 2 years go by. They do make it back to the playoffs in 1989, but they can only win 1 game against the powerhouse Oakland A's, and it never really feels like they're in this series. I have memories of Rickey Henderson in this series. He was an absolute terror. Couldn't get this guy out. Seemed like he was on base the whole time, and whenever he got on base, he would steal the next base. Now, at this point, someone finally clues in that maybe a culture change is needed, and they orchestrate the big trade that brings the author of great home run number 5 to the team, Roberto Alomar, along with Joe Carter. And the Jays do make the playoffs in 1991, but again, not really a threat to the World Series. They only win a single game in the playoffs. Which brings us to next year and this moment. The 1992 ALCS against their old nemesis, the Oakland A's. With the benefit of hindsight here today, there is a temptation to look at this series on paper as kind of being a situation of one team being on the rise, that being the Toronto Blue Jays, taking on another team whose dynasty was in decline, that being the Oakland A's. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, that was not at all the feeling at the time. Even though the Blue Jays jumped out to a 2-1 lead in this series, it still never felt safe. As an example of this, let me take you all the way to the 8th inning of game number 4. And the Blue Jays are losing 6-1. At that time, no team in playoff history had come back to win from a deficit that big that late in the game. And to make the comeback all the more improbable, the Jays would have to do it against this guy, Eckersley. Not just the premier relief pitcher in baseball who saved 51 games in 1992, not just the Cy Young winner that year, but also the MVP of the entire league. Imagine a relief pitcher winning the MVP. No one since has been able to do it, not even Mariano Rivera. Yet the Blue Jays do chip away at this lead. And by the time Roberto Alomar comes to the plate in the 9th inning, there's a runner on third base. Alomar represents the tying run, and he delivers greatest home run in Blue Jay history, number 5. Now, Alomar's home run only ties this game. The Jays do have to go on to win this game in extra innings, but it is this moment, Alomar's home run, when the franchise finally realizes maybe, just maybe, we got something pretty special going on here. Which brings us to the 4th greatest home run in Blue Jays history, Ed Sprague's pinch hit home run in Game 2 of the World Series this same year. Now, obviously, a lot of the same backstory that I just explained applies here as well. So then, why do I rank the Sprague home run one slot higher than the Alomar home run? Largely because now we're in the World Series, man. Put it this way. If the Alomar home run was the moment that the Blue Jays believed we're good enough to make it to the World Series. But with this Ed Sprague home run, now the Blue Jays believe we might be good enough to win the whole thing. Because who's to say? If Ed Sprague does not hit this home run, maybe the Blue Jays don't win this World Series. Because after all, at the moment, when Ed Sprague comes to pinch hit, the Jays are down in the series, 1-0. And they're losing by 1 run in the 9th inning. If the Jays go down 0-2, do they go on to win the World Series? All we know for sure is that Sprague did come through in the clutch, delivered a pinch hit home run in the 9th inning to put the Jays in the lead. They go on to win the game. They go on to win the World Series. And for the first time ever, the World Championship banner flies north of the border, in large part due to great home run number 4 on my list, courtesy of Ed Sprague. Okay, now we're down to the top 3, and I got to be honest with you. It was deciding which to put number 3 and which to put number 2 that gave me my greatest dilemma in making this list. Makes you appreciate how awesome number 2 must be when you learn that it was more awesome than number 3. But my choice for the 3rd greatest home run in Blue Jays history is the home run known simply as the bat flip by Jose Bautista. And there's just an incredible backstory behind this one, too. So, in 2015, when the Jays get back to the playoffs, they had not been in the playoffs since their last World Series win In 1993, this streak of futility at the time is the longest drought, not just of any baseball team. It's the longest non-playoff drought of any team in all of North American professional sports. The moment comes in a deciding game, game number 5 of the ALDS. I think people forget actually that the Jays were actually down in this series 0-2 after the first 2 games. They had to win the last 3 games to advance. And the moment comes in the 7th inning of the deciding game. The 7th inning, one of the most famous or most infamous innings in all of baseball history. In the Rangers' top half of this 7th inning, we have one of the damnedest things you'll ever see in a baseball game. I really don't know how to describe it. Well, first of all, okay, so the game is tied. The Rangers have a runner on third base, okay? And the Rangers batter, as the catcher, Russell Martin, is trying to toss the ball back to the pitcher, as you do, this Rangers dude holds his bat, okay, like this, way out, not quite over the plate, but at the very limit of the batter's box you could possibly hope to reach to. He's holding his arm like this. Russell Martin throws the ball back. The ball bounces off the bat, rolls down the line. The guy on third for the Rangers thinks it's a live ball, runs home, touches the plate, and everyone starts losing their minds. There is literally an 18-minute delay to try to figure out what the hell just happened. Finally, the umpires decide it was in fact a live ball, the run counts, and the Jays are now trailing by 1 in the 7th inning. The fans start throwing stuff on the field. There's babies that are like getting hit almost by this stuff. I actually do have a memory of what I was thinking watching this unfold. And I was like most people, and I had no earthly idea what was the actual rule when this most unlikely scenario happens. But after they explained, and apparently they got the call right, but my interpretation was, if that is the rule, then that's a really, really stupid rule. You can score a run like that. So anyway, the Jays do get to bat in their bottom of the 7th, and to put it mildly, the tension is mounting. The leadoff batter for the Jays in the bottom of the 7th is Russell Martin, the catcher, who was involved in this nonsense in the top of the 7th, who also is a Canadian, by the way. Man, oh man, here's a shout out. If anyone knows Russell Martin, I would love to interview him for my podcast. We'd do a sit and watch of this inning. It would be fantastic. So anyway, Russell's the leadoff batter for the Blue Jays. And if all that stuff in the top of the 7th wasn't crazy enough, the bottom of the 7th begins with the Texas Rangers basically forgetting how to play defense. They commit 3 errors on the first 3 batters, an error on each play. For those of you not familiar with baseball, you're only supposed to get 3 outs in an inning. The Rangers should have been out of this inning already. But as Jays fans are well aware, that is not what happened. And the Blue Jays now have the bases loaded with nobody out. Next batter hits a grounder. The play comes to the plate, and the Rangers get the force out, the first out of the inning, but not before the Jays player slides into home and takes the legs out from the Rangers catcher. They are not happy about this. The tension mounts even higher. The next Jays batter is Josh Donaldson, and he ties the game, but he does so on kind of a weird blooping type hit, and there's a force out at second. So now we have tie game, but there's 2 on, 2 out, and Jose Bautista coming to the plate. My take on the bat flip is the same today as it was at that moment. And although this moment is not in ancient history, it was 10 years ago. And there was a little bit of a different attitude 10 years ago in the game of baseball. Namely, you are not supposed to show up your opponent. Not like it is today when you have teams hit a home run and they literally give the guy who hit the home run like an Aquaman trident type thing. And so you would be kind of right if you looked at me and said, That guy looks like a grumpy old curmudgeon, and he probably doesn't think you should be doing things like bat flipping after you hit a home run. But I will say today, as I thought then, Jose Batista meant absolutely no disrespect to the opponent by doing that bat flip. It was simply the outpouring of his own personal emotions. A cathartic release, if you will, because this game and this inning, this seventh inning, had been so bonkers. And he hits the home run to put the Jays in the lead, a lead which, by the way, they never relinquished. They go on to win the game. They advance to the American League Championship Series. And the bat flip is okay by me because it was born of pure emotion, positive emotion, no malintent. And Jose Batista's bat flip home run is the third greatest home run in Toronto Blue Jays history. The second greatest home run in Toronto Blue Jays history is the one we just saw. George Springer, American League Championship Series, Game 7, 2025. In the history of baseball, there have been 35-year-olds who have had better seasons than George Springer had this year. But I really am not sure if there has ever been a better season by a 35-year-old following his 34-year-old season that was as bad as George Springer's year was last year. Let me interject a real small bit of sports science here. Look, the average age in Major League Baseball is like 29. The overwhelmingly usual trajectory when a 34-year-old baseball athlete experiences a decline is that they keep declining. In fact, they get worse and worse until they can't play in the league anymore. Not George Springer, though. An incredible bounce back year, maybe the best year of his entire career as a 35-year-old. And so, in our moment here, the Blue Jays MVP comes to the plate in the bottom of the seventh with his team down by 2 runs in Game 7 with a chance to go to the World Series on the line. Listen to this. In all of baseball history, no player had ever hit a go-ahead home run while trailing by multiple runs in the 7th inning or later of a Game 7. And that is exactly what George Springer does here. Sends the Blue Jays off to the World Series for the first time in 32 years. My goodness, what a run it was, man. And for these reasons, I think George Springer's home run is the second greatest Blue Jays home run of all time. The single greatest home run in Blue Jays history? No doubt, no surprises. Joe Carter, Game 6, 1993 World Series. Like I mentioned off the top, I think the structure of the game of baseball really lends itself to the manufacturing of these kind of super dramatic moments. Yet, up until this moment, there had only been one single occasion where the World Series was won with a walk-off homer. And that, of course, was the legendary Bill Mazeroski, who came to bat in the bottom of the ninth of the 1960 World Series, Game 7, no less, with the score tied and hit the series-winning home run. Joe Carter gets his legendary moment 33 years later. No one's done it since, but Carter was the first player to hit a World Series winning home run when his team was actually losing the game. The famous line, of course, that goes along with this home run is when the announcer says, "Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life." That's true because of just the improbability of the number of different factors that have to conspire together to allow this to happen. Game 6 of a World Series, bottom of the ninth, you're trailing in the game at home. Just the stuff of legends, man. I remember watching this home run. It was me and my brother watching the home run. When Joe hits the homer, we run outside. This is late at night in Newfoundland. We run outside, and we happen to see two of our buddies on the street who had been watching the game together, and they had run outside. So the four of us are now outside, jumping up and down, going crazy because our team, the Blue Jays, just won the World Series in the most dramatic of fashions. What memories! And so those are my top 5 greatest home runs in Toronto Blue Jay history. But before I go, I'd like to leave you with one more memory, a bonus memory, if you will. And it's actually my favorite memory of this 2025 unbelievable World Series run that we just witnessed. And it is a moment, it's a memory that comes courtesy of a guy named Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And it's not a home run, although he did hit 8 of them. The memory that I'm talking about, the moment that I'm talking about, is this. You are looking at the immediate seconds after the final out of Game 7, and the Blue Jays have won the American League Championship Series. This photo reminds me of a line from the old poem by Rudyard Kipling, If, which is, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs. In this image, we see a person who, in the seconds after he's learned he is going to the World Series, he has achieved his lifelong dream, and he is serene. He is reflective, even grateful, I would say, against a backdrop of chaos, because behind him there's thousands of fans that are losing their collective minds. I got to be honest, I find this image does what all good art does, and that is it stirs up emotion within me. And that's a big reason why I got so invested in the story of this playoff run, because Vlad drew me in with his emotion. That reminds me of another good line, actually, not from a poem, but from a great movie, a sports movie, no less. But everyone's heard the line, "You had me at hello," right? So Vlad had me here. But then, immediately after this, the man goes to the post-game interview on the field, and you can see the tears coming down his face. He's not that good of an actor. You cannot fake that. It is raw, pure emotion. He cries when he made it to the World Series, the same tears when they lost the World Series. Or another example, look at when Vlad turns that great double play in Game 7, bottom of the 7th. There's 6 outs away. Look at his reaction. It's compelling stuff. And like I said at the beginning, whether it be the way you feel because of a moment like this, or the way you feel because of one of these 5 great home runs, those are the reasons why we watch sports. Good day, everybody.